Yay.
All right. Since we've got a full house, good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the Fruita City Council meeting. It is now 7 p.m. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Deb, would you please call roll?
Counselor Bremen,
Here.
Counselor Purser,
Here.
Counselor Williams,
Here.
Counselor Cry,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Here.
and Counselor O'Brien is excused absent.
All right. We're going to move into our moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. If you'd all stand with us. We'd like to take the opportunity to offer a silent prayer for all faiths and beliefs. Thank you. If you'd please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we've got an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda?
Changes to the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Counselor Bremen,
Yes.
Counselor Purser,
Yes.
Counselor Williams,
Yes.
Counselor Cry,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
motion passes 5-0.
All right, we do not have any proclamations or presentations tonight, so we're going to move into public participation. So this section is set aside for the city council to listen to comments by the public regarding items that do not appear on the agenda. We normally will not take any action on these items. So is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, Ciara, is there anybody online?
Not online, Mr. Mayor.
All right, with that, we're going to close public participation and move into our consent agenda. So these are all items where all conditions or requirements have been agreed to or met prior to the time before they come before council for final action. They'll all be approved by a single motion. So with that, we're going to open that up to public comment. Is there anybody that would like to speak on any item on the consent agenda? Do you see anybody online?
Not online.
All right, so with that, we're going to bring it back to council. Does anybody have any questions or do we have a motion?
I've got a question on item J.
All right,
It's the agreement with Excel Energy, and I emailed Mike with some of this as well. And I'm getting a little confused. I apologize for reading the two agreements, but I think it was section 6.6. It talked about as-built will be provided in a paper format. And I apologize because this is part of what I do for a living, but why wouldn't we want those all in a digital format in a standard shape file, KMG file, or something like that, since we as a municipality use and as we tie into the ESRI system. So it can tie automatically into our GIS system.
okay.
So that was one. The second one is, and I may have missed this, but let's say there's a fire and electrical pole burns. Who would be responsible for the cost of replacing that pole? I know this has come up in the past. Was my second one. And the third question I had is it's a 3% with a 1% kicker for undergrounding. And I'm not questioning the amount. It was just, why is it at 3% and 1% when there can be a range? So
Okay, so let me ask this question. Should we pull that off consent and move it farther in, or do you think we can answer these? And
We can answer them. I don't know if you saw the responses we gave or,
I saw there was a response. I did not have a chance.
okay. Just keep in mind tonight is just setting the hearing so that to be discussed at a future meeting.
okay,
But happy to answer any questions if you want us to go through them.
so the question, right, so right now tonight is all right, so if I can.
Oh, wait.
The franchise agreement.
Okay, so that's not J, that's,
Oh, I
Yeah,
apologize.
the franchise, that's H.
sorry.
I was like, yeah, okay, all right. So this is just the first reading, so we're setting that, so,
I apologize. I
okay,
wrong.
all right.
Excel.
So if that's, I mean, so all we're doing is we're setting a public hearing for that. And so we can have more discussion and get more information on that item to have available.
So, and this is just a point of clarification, but at this point, shouldn't city staff be starting to have those conversations with Excel?
Yes.
What's in it?
do you want us to just give you the answer?
Yeah, let's, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the first section regarding the GIS data, this section refers to as-built drawings of, and we do have Brad McLeod on as well. So with Excel Energy, so he can, Brad, feel free to chime in or correct if there's something I'm misstating here, so they're referring to as-built drawings of any of the PSCO facility located within the city streets or contiguous to the city streets, which the city may request, and states that this information is confidential and not subject to Open Records Act. So per their agreement, as-built drawings do not include information already in their GIS. So Brad, maybe you could speak to that if we're making the assumption here that there's proprietary information in that we're not able to, that we need to keep to a certain degree.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So one, hard copy as built will be provided also on project side, simply because if there's changes being made, they can be marked up and drawn as we do typically. And to Mayor Pro Tem Bremen's concern, I think just about every project we do supply a digital configuration of whatever the project scope is. This just happens to be something that if requested, we can provide that. The other reason is out of security reasons, we will share information on where lines are located and everything per project and specific to the project with an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement with the city, but for, I think, fairly obvious security concerns about where some of those assets are located and what they may be. We do hold that proprietary through the PUC to make sure that we can protect those. Does that answer your question?
So Brad, so when, let's say you're running underground utilities from the station all the way out to the house, that all falls under that, all of that information along that entire route is considered a security base?
It's available for the project manager. We will share it with the city if they ask and request per project. But it's not something we make readily available for public access, no.
So we don't go in blind in any projects working
Right.
with them, but it's not available.
Like, or 811 before you.
That information is available.
I mean,
when
we get it
requested.
directly
We
from
mark them.
Excel for the project. Our project manager is what he's saying. Yeah.
All right.
And so if somebody calls an 811 in, we do make sure that we send out locates for those.
All right. Just in other areas, that's not what I've seen. So, like state, just once again, because I have to be a nerd about this, like state of New Jersey and other states, some of them do require sub-meter accuracy, and all that information provided in a KMG or a shape file.
And when we request it and when we're working with a project manager, though, that is provided during the project. So
What was the
Then
second one?
the third or the second was the franchise fee. So council, I mean, we really have the ability to set that fee at whichever percentage as we work with Excel during the negotiation of the contract. So we can ask for more if we'd like. That's a pass-through fee. So we've kept it at 3% since 1985. So while we would receive more, it just charges all the residents 1% more. So we don't have any professional recommendation on needing to increase it in any way for what we do, but it's just passed on. I mean, it's just a pass-through essentially.
Is that a standard rate, Michael, that's kind of across the country that you see?
There's a range. I mean, but yeah, 3%'s not uncommon. I would say, I don't know if they get far beyond 5 in the state.
Sure.
actually,
They're lower as well. Like,
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Management, if I could interject, 3% is the standard cap that Xtel Energy runs across our territories that we do, whether it be Colorado or the northern districts or even in Texas. 3% is where we are standard wise. That way we treat each community equitably on that cap rate. I know some other, and this is prior to my time with Excel. I know some other franchise fees with other entities, telecommunications for one. Pretty standard to look at those anywhere from 3 to 5%, but as a utility, we're 3% across the board, and we kind of have that arrangement. Well, we have that arrangement in every community we're in. That's our standard.
In
franchise.
reality, it's a 3+1, correct?
Correct. And then you do have the 1% fund that we put back for all undergrounding projects as identified by the city.
And then the third question was regarding just who's responsible for any repairs or replacement of electric poles, and that's Excel.
Correct.
And we did have that double checked with Mary Elizabeth that it's clear in the agreement as well. So
I nerded out on that.
no, they're great questions. Yeah.
That's all right.
Um,
Go ahead, Brad.
If I may, I actually, Mayor Pro Tem Bremen kind of jokes about nerding out, but I actually appreciate knowing that we supply and actually somebody does go through it with a fine tooth comb, and that shows that you're doing your due diligence. I appreciate that very much. It makes me not the only nerd in the room on this call. Really big part.
Thanks, I
I feel better
think.
about.
Well, thank you, Brad, for your input and helping clarify that for us.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second. Yes.
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 All right, we're going to move into our public hearings. And so we have one legislative hearing tonight. It's Resolution 2022-15, a request to opt out of the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program. And we've got our Human Resources Director, Odette Brock, here to present on this.
And as Odette walks up, just so many of you might be aware, in the private sector, this has been a big change in law throughout the state, requiring private companies to implement this benefit and participate with the state, and local governments have the opportunity to opt out. So Odette's going to walk through kind of why we are recommending to opt out and kind of a little bit of background on this. So thanks, Odette.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Odette Brock, Human Resource Director, and I'm here this evening to do a presentation on the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program and to request that you approve that the city opt out of the program. So this presentation was in your packet, so I'm going to kind of breeze through it, but I will entertain any questions that you may have. So to start with, what is Family? Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program provides covered employees with 12 weeks of paid leave to care for themselves or a family member during life events like injury, serious illness, or pregnancy. It also provides job protection for those employees that have been employed for at least 180 days before they take the leave. It's a separate program from our paid leave, and it is also a separate program from the federal program, Family and Medical Leave Act, which is 12 weeks of unpaid leave. And it is not mandatory for local governments. A municipality can opt out of this program. So the FMLA, or the family premiums, will basically work in the same way as unemployment insurance and on the same schedule, which means that it's funded by premiums, and the employer and the employee are both responsible for funding the program. What happens is premiums will be collected, the employee and employer portions, beginning January 1st, 2023, and then will be available for use beginning January 1st, 2024. Premiums currently are set at 0.9%, which is 0.45% for the employee and 0.45% for the employer. The initial 0.9% premium is fixed through 2024, but it cannot go above 1.20%. Again, family is not mandatory for local governments. A municipality can opt out and avoid the employer portion of premiums by a vote of the city council. The vote can occur anytime before January 1st, and that is supposed to be, that is a typo, January 1st of 2024. If city council does not opt out of the family, every city employee will have deductions made from their pay for this program beginning January 1st of 2023, regardless of whether they believe participating is the right choice for them and their family. The family program is not optional if we do not opt out. We will automatically become a covered employer beginning January 1st, 2023. Employees must also be notified in writing of the decision within 30 days of the vote tonight. If the city opts out of the program, the good news is that employees can individually participate in this. They can enroll directly with the state and pay their premiums directly to the state. Under that scenario, employees would receive full benefits at the same premium for the employee, which is 0.45%, regardless of whether the city is a covered employer or not. Of course, we must notify the family division of our vote to decline participation if that is what happens this evening. If we do not opt out now, we must wait 3 years to decline participation, and declination must occur every 8 years, or we're automatically added back into the family program. If we wish to opt in at a later date, we can do so by an affirmative vote of you all at the beginning of the annual local budgeting cycle. So we have an opportunity to get in later if we want. The next slide is just a timeline of the vote and all of the things that I just outlined on the previous slide. Fiscal and other impacts of family. The cost of the family program will increase the city's budget by at least 0.45% of its employees' wages annually and potentially more. Currently, that we can save over $30,000 annually and growing by declining participation. Family also includes additional work for finance and human resources staff. Employees who want the paid benefits of family, again, can participate if they so desire at the same cost if we opt out of the program. Employees may benefit from the city opting out because the city would have no financial responsibility for 50% of that premium, and the city could choose to use that savings to benefit employees directly, such as putting that amount towards wages to help up with wage increases and increasing costs of everything. Considerations and staff recommendations. Ongoing increasing costs are one of several reasons that staff is recommending that we opt out of the family program. We already offer a generous paid leave program, 10 paid holidays, 1 discretionary day, at least 2 weeks of vacation and 12 sick days. The vacation and the sick days accrue. We're also subject to the Healthy Family and Workplaces Act, which says that our part-time employees will accrue 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, up to a maximum of 48 hours annually. If council opts out, staff recommends also declining to withhold and remit employee premiums for those who elect coverage to lessen the city's potential financial liabilities and administrative requirements. As required prior to the vote, I prepared an email and a letter on June 13th and notified our employees about the opportunity for them to provide comment on this if desired at this meeting. In addition, employees were informed that they could also provide written comments to City Council prior to the meeting, which would be considered part of the public comment. To the best of my knowledge, I don't see anybody here to provide comment, and I don't believe we received anything in writing. Again, staff is recommending that the city vote to opt out of the program for the reasons stated above. So what's next? Staff is recommending that City Council vote to opt out of the family program by approving Resolution 2022-15. If you do approve that resolution, Human Resources will notify employees in writing within 30 days of this vote so that they know the outcome. Ensure all written notices are prepared and distributed as required. And I will notify the family division of the city's decision to decline participation in the family program as soon as I am able. Questions? Told you I was gonna breeze through that.
Since it's a legislative hearing, we need to open it up to public comment. So what, Mike's got one.
Can I add a couple things, just as we shared it with employees, we did all the required pieces, but then we had department directors work with each of the divisions, make sure that we have some employees that do not have emails based on their jobs, and made sure that they were verbally talked to, that people saw the postings to make sure everybody was fully aware. I think there's more concern from them about paychecks going down and when they have the option to get the benefit either way, if they wanted to choose to do it versus it just being done across the board. And Mary Elizabeth, who's on, just noticed that we have the wrong version of the resolution in there. And so we need to make an update to the resolution. And I think, I don't know how
That I did just send that to Margaret and Mike. Margaret, I don't know if you have Shannon, do you want me to send it to you?
he has it. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't have he has the one with the red lines. Hold on.
Did you get the one you just
I
sent?
apologize for including the wrong resolution.
That's okay. And I apologize since we'd had so much back and forth. I just,
It
shame
just
on
came-
me, thought the right one was in the packet. So
Just came through to Margaret, so we'll go ahead and share it.
Well, and while we're waiting for that to come through, we'll open up for public comment. I know there's nobody in the room here tonight. Is there anybody online that is raising their hand to speak on this item?
No one's online, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So with that, we'll bring it back to council. Are there questions, comments?
Is the content of the red line or the wrong version, any difference in the content or just the?
Yeah, Mary Elizabeth, do you mind explaining the difference?
sure, I will explain the difference. Couple of things. I added in the whereases, just findings that the written notice had been provided on June 10th as required. That city had also provided just regular notice as always under the meetings law about the hearing tonight. And then that you did hear testimony tonight from city staff. There were not any city employees or members of the public. So I think what we can just do is that we state that we opened it for testimony from city employees and members of the public, and there was not any. And these are some recommendations from CML to be sure to have in your resolution if you were voting to opt out.
Answer the question, some of us had a challenge seeing it and had to stand up.
Well, if I would have
That's a
included
small
the right
print.
one in the packet, I apologize.
So because employees have an option to do it on their own, is it sort of like regular insurance? Do you just have like one time a year where you can opt in if you so choose, or how does that work? The rules haven't been written maybe yet?
They've actually have written the rules, and it's my understanding, and Odette, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think an employee can opt in at any time. They just might have to wait then before the benefits accrue. Does that make sense? So because you've got to be putting money into the system for a certain amount of time. So for instance, if you did start January 23rd, the benefits aren't available till January 2023. The benefits aren't available until January 2024.
Gotcha.
Gives an opportunity for the fund to build.
Right. Yep.
I don't like the fact that government has different rules than the private industry. I wish the private industry had the option to opt out like we do.
We're not voting on that one tonight. though.
Political rant.
It's just an aside.
Yeah.
You said comments.
I know, that's true. I agree with that.
Those are
I have to
comments.
concur.
That was a comment.
I do concur with that comment. But all right, are there any other questions or comments on this?
I would like to comment that if there were sufficient amount of employees that were interested in participating, I wouldn't mind, the idea of the city collecting that on their behalf, because I know it'd be probably easier for the city to do it, but it sounds like nobody had any interest in that happening. So that's all I have.
All right.
It's the comment.
Any other, or is there a motion?
And in your motion, please make it to adopt resolution 15-2022 as amended at tonight's meeting.
Was there something else too that we also had to recommend something else? I remember seeing it.
Oh, as amended.
No, besides that, I'm sorry.
It was the non-collecting.
Yes,
So do we need two resolutions?
or just part of one. Oh, I see what you mean. A motion, could it be included in one motion to adopt the resolution and recommend that?
It says,
Please have to,
it actually, the resolution does say with such decision to include declining to collect and remit
Oh,
employee
all right.
premiums. So for those employees who elect coverage under family. So the resolution already does cover that the city will not be doing that.
Then I'll move that we adopt resolution 2022-15 as amended, approving the request to opt out of the family and medical leave insurance program.
Second.
Counselor Williams,
Yes.
Counselor Cry,
yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Bremen,
Yes.
Counselor Purser,
Yes.
motion passes 5-0.
All right, thanks, Odette.
Thank you.
Thank you, Odette.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, thank you, Mary Elizabeth. All right, with that, we're gonna move in our administrative agenda. So we've got our 2021 draft financial statements. It's that time of year already?
Exciting stuff. So in your packet, got a bunch of papers with a bunch of numbers on them. That information is our financial statements. It's a little bit dated. It's from December 31, 2021. So we're past that point now and moving on, but just kind of give you guys a snapshot of where we are financially as a big picture. So we've got a couple of presentations. We also, after this, we'll do the fiscal health analysis, which hopefully we'll just breeze right through unless you have any questions. Just starting with the financial statements, for those of you who aren't familiar with looking at financial statements, this is just kind of a brief guide. All the condensed information. Well, first of all, it starts off with auditor reports. They're still in the process of finalizing their audit, and our auditors, Chadwick, Stein, Kirchner, and Davis, will be here at the next meeting, or excuse me, the second meeting in July, to present their findings on the numbers, to tell you whether or not they feel they're accurately representing our condition. Second item is the management's discussion and analysis. That's one of the sections, and it's not all numbers, but there's still a lot of numbers in it. But it's more of a narrative of certain things that we have to cover according to governmental accounting principles, and touches on those items and a little bit easier to read than just the raw numbers. The third thing that's concluded is the basic financial statements. Those are your government-wide financial statements and your fund financial statements. Then we have the notes to the financial statements. Once again, that's a narrative that explains some of the detail behind the numbers. Then we have required supplementary information, and that information is essentially our budget to actual comparisons for just our major funds. So you'll see the community center fund and the general fund there. And then under other supplementary information, you'll see those same schedules for the other funds that we have in the city. And then a single audit is required if we receive federal funds in excess of $750,000 in any one year. In 2021, that's not applicable. It will probably be applicable this year and next year with some of the recent grant awards that we've had and the art funds that are coming down. So just when you're looking at financial statements, you're going to find detail in the back. And as you go forward, it's more condensed information, combining information together. So if you're looking for information detail in the back. The city has three different fund types. We'll just concentrate on two. Governmental activities, and those are funds that are primarily funded through tax revenues of some sort. And under those funds, we have the general fund. Excuse me,
Community Center Fund, the Capital Projects Fund, Debt Service Fund. You can read those as well as I can. But they're really primarily tax-funded funds. Business type activities are those that are really more operated like a business. You're trying to recoup from charges for, you're charging charges for services, you're providing a service, and you're trying to make sure that the charges are covering your expenses and your investments in the infrastructure. So I'm sorry if that's pretty basic for some of you, but I don't know how new this is to all of you either. Just some of the highlights as we get into last year. Yeah, let me see if I can. I can't pull up my notes, so I'm sorry. City sales tax. Did I?
You skipped a slide, yeah.
Oh, city.
Are you back one? No.
Okay. The citywide net position, this combines all the governmental funds and all the business type funds, so all 14 funds that we have. It's a statement of net position. And we had an increase of 5.1 million, 5% from the prior year. And in that net position, that increase of 5.1 million, there was $1 million in capital assets, $1.2 million in restricted assets, and $3 million increase in unrestricted assets. We'll talk about those a little bit. And another highlight is our city sales tax. We had an increase of 400,000, 15% from the prior year. We have a 5-year, I don't know if you can see that little arrow on the top, but 5-year average 15.8% annual growth rate for the last 5 years compared to 3.1% for the prior 5 years. So it's good news that it's grown that quickly, but it's kind of hard to predict going from a 3.1% rate average to that makes it kind of difficult to start preparing the 2023 budget and going forward on what do you predict for sales tax revenues. Highlight on the community center fund. This is one of the funds that was really severely impacted by COVID. We had to shut down the facility. We still had a number of operating expenses. Then when we did reopen, it was with restrictions, mask wearing, capacity restrictions. And so it took a pretty good hit from COVID. And so we've been paying some special attention to that. And they saw quite a bit of recovery in 2021 with operating revenues at 78% of pre-pandemic levels compared to 52% during the pandemic start. But that decrease in our operating revenues, which is from charges for services, the tax revenues had that 15.8% growth rate. So it offset some of that negative or decline in the charges for services. The tax revenue of 1% of the 3% in the city is dedicated by the voters that approved it at an election to the community center. And the way that community center question was worded, 0.6 of that 1% goes to pay the bonds and 4% goes to pay for operating expenses. And that 4% stays on in perpetuity. We keep that 4%. That 0.4 of 1% in perpetuity. That 0.6 goes away in January 1 of 2039 or when the bonds are paid off, whichever comes first. So we try and maintain a good level of funding operating expenses with just that 0.4 of 1% so that we don't get reliant on it for operating costs that will go away in a few years, probably outside of our terms, but it's still something I think we need to make sure of. So what we do with that excess revenue right now is put it aside and use it for one-time expenses, capital improvements, maybe expansion, new equipment, things that actually go towards the facility and improvements of the facility versus personnel costs, supplies and equipment, those annual operating expenses. So you kind of see there the 2019 figure on top. In 2021, we took in more revenue, but most of that was due to the tax revenues, and we're still trying to work on the operating revenues coming up to those pre-pandemic levels. Another highlight for last year's the 3% voter-approved lodging tax increase went into effect on January 1 of 2021. And that 3% is to be used as the council approves between public places and economic development. In 2021, it was divided equally, 1.5% to public places and 1.5% to economic development. But that's at your preview. That can be spent at any percentage among those different uses. And in this year's budget, it's all going to open spaces. We're using it to help maintain the North Mulberry street openings there, as well as a few other things. Lodging tax, which also suffered during COVID, came back real strong last year. It had a 92% increase as compared to 2019 pre-pandemic levels. So a very strong year for tourism. And I think a lot of that is just pent up demand with people having to stay home for a couple of years. And once they could get out, they felt like these outdoor recreation sites were probably the place to go. Another highlight, we have a loan from the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority for the wastewater treatment facility. That loan was, the bonds underlying the loan were refunded by the CWRPDA last year, and they passed those savings along to the cities that were involved in that bond issue in the form of interest savings. So you can see there, over the life of the bonds, that credit column is the interest savings that we'll realize over the next, 2032, up until 2032. So it's about a $2 million saving, $1.8 million savings in interest cost. In the last year, you'll notice 2032, the credit is more than the interest payment that's due, and that difference will be actually applied to the principal. But that then kept us from having to redo the loan agreements and other technical documents by just doing it against the interest. And it doesn't affect the principal balance that we carry on the books. So those kind of just the highlights. On the government-wide financial statements, that's kind of the first section of the basic financial statements, and it combines all your business type funds, and it combines all the governmental type funds. And there's a statement of net position and a statement of activities. And one of the key takes away there is, oops, my mouse is pretty picky. What we're looking at is, just when we talk about net position, essentially net position is your assets, less the amount that you owe, your liabilities, and that's what we mean by net position. That's your savings account, that's what you've accumulated. But within that net position, it's broken down in the government-wide statements to include long-term assets and long-term debt. So what you'll see in the government-wide statements is significant amount of assets, and we'll look at the next slide that will show that breakdown. The current assets increased about 24% from the prior year, primarily cash. And then our long-term assets, our capital assets, decreased about $400,000 from the prior year. You see our liabilities were fairly consistent. They increased about $1 million. That $1 million increase is primarily related to the ARP grant. We record that as liability because we have not, it's unearned revenue. We have not yet spent it, so it's not earned, and we might have to pay it back to the feds. So even though it goes on the books as cash, and it also goes as liability. The deferred inflows of resources are essentially property taxes, and we assessed the mill levy at the end of last year. Those taxes are due as of 12/31 of last year, but they're paid this year. So we don't have that revenue in hand yet. And then so you can see the bottom line is net position for the city of $105 million. As we look at that $105 million, the bulk of it, 74%, is in non-spendable assets. That's capital assets. That's your streets, your bridges, your roads, your sewer lines, your irrigation lines, all those infrastructure items that we have. Then we have $5.5 million in restricted assets, and those restricted assets are defined as assets that are restricted by law, other governing bodies, but not by the local governing body. So our bonds, loans are all kind of, the reserves are imposed by somebody else outside the city, are considered restricted assets. Unrestricted assets are assets that the city has, and they can dictate how those are spent. This is across 14 funds. So it looks like a big number there, $22 million, but it whittles away fairly quickly, and we spend it fairly quickly. And we'll show you kind of when we go through the individual funds where that money sits. This is just kind of showing you the same thing, but in a revenue expense type category. So you can see in the governmental revenues. And however, I'm guessing the 16.3 million is 2021 revenues, that light pink, and the darker pink is 2020. So just kind of comparison of where the revenues are between 2020 and 2021. And
I'm saying it's expenses.
That's not a yearly. That's just position by category.
yeah, I'm sorry. So, I'm sorry. Governmental funds increased our net position by $4.1 million, and on the business types, $1 million. So that way is where we come up with that $5.1 million increase in that position. Apologize, I don't have my notes in front of me. Then we'll get into kind of the fund financial statements for governmental funds. The first one is the general fund. So this is kind of a comparison of when you guys adopt the budget, we amend it throughout the year. So this is the amended budget that includes all the amendments the council has approved throughout the year, and a comparison of that to where the actual revenues or expenses came in. So you can see our revenues were higher than budget, 11.1 million compared to 9.3 million. Expenses, 8.7 to 7.86 million. So we were under our expenses by $910,000. And then the other financing and sources and uses, which is primarily transfers in and out of funds, had a positive variance of 2.23 million. That 2.23 million positive variance is the biggest piece that adds to that. And it's really related to transfers to the capital projects fund. We postponed or didn't complete several of the capital projects fund, like Pine Street Bridge. We budgeted for it, but we ended up carrying it over because of delays with land acquisition and other items. On the revenue side, that difference, a part of that is the ARP. No, it's not. It's just mainly tax revenues, related to tax revenues. And Shannon, just a quick question for you. Is there any way I can make this small on mine so I can see my notes? I don't want to give wrong information. Will they support? Well, and they can see my notes. They can't see my notes. Oh, yeah, there you go. Let me see if I can get it shared now.
That way she doesn't have to worry about what she shares with us.
Okay. Yes. Sorry, you're seeing a little bit of other stuff, but that will help you not get lost. We were talking about the general fund revenues and expenses. 1.78 million variance, primarily sales and use tax revenues, expenses, the 910,000. 200,000 of that is in contingency funds that weren't spent, and the remaining 700,000 was split among various departments. If you're looking for some of the detail on this in the financial statements, you'll find it on a certain page. Are y'all interested? Page 64, if you are. Next slide. On the fund balance in the general fund, this is kind of similar to the net position. It's the savings account, but it's a focus on current resources, whereas the net position is more on long-term resources. So We have the restricted ones, as we talked about, it's by law or outside entities. We have $803,000 of our fund balance that's restricted. That's primarily Tabor emergency reserves, 400,000, and then public safety reserves, the public safety where the county is dedicated for public safety. We've designated it to pay for the 911 dispatch center charges and then other expenses. I think we hired an officer to pay out of that, and this is funds that are in excess of those that we set aside to pay for future capital or other needs for public safety. We have the assigned fund balance of $6.2 million. These are amounts that are assigned by the city for specific uses. A big chunk of that is in our capital equipment replacement fund. We set aside money on an annual basis, a similar amount of money every year so that we can replace our equipment as it needs to be replaced. So if you have a $60,000 patrol car, you don't have to come up with money out of current year revenue. You can fund it out of this capital equipment replacement fund. Mainly a big help when you're replacing street sweepers or some of that equipment that's $400,000 or $500,000 equipment, so that it doesn't have such a huge impact on current operating expenses. You have this savings account to draw from to help pay for those. The unassigned fund balance is amounts that are available for other uses. It includes an operating reserve that's equivalent to 25% of the general fund expenditures, and it leaves about that amount is 1.8 million, and we have another 6.9 million for future expenses to spend as the council sees appropriate. This just kind of shows the changes in the fund balance amounts, the restricted, assigned, and unassigned amounts. Restricted increased by 137,000. We talked about that being the public safety funds. The assigned fund balance increased by 2.5 million. And that is because we have funds that we budgeted this year from our savings account. And so those amounts are assigned for this year's expenses. And that's the big change. And the reason for that $2.5 million increase. And then we have assigned funds of 1.1 million for the SURF, the capital equipment replacement fund. And there's some other miscellaneous assignments on unassigned. Those are funds that are available for other uses. It includes, as we talked about, the operating reserve, as well as $6.9 million in other funds. Moving on to any questions there? Now it's writing notes.
You have a question? Go.
Yes, the 25% of the operating reserve, does that include salary for FTE?
Yes. In the general fund. Yeah. Community Center Fund. Go on to that one. You can see the detail on page 65 of the financial statements. This is once again a final budget to the actual expenses and revenues. You can see there was a revenue variance of, I got an extra zero there, but it's $710,000. That's primarily related to the sales and use tax revenues. That was $424,000 variance with budget. And then charges for services, $271,000. We budgeted pretty conservatively, not knowing how we were going to come back from the COVID. So those charges came in and exceeded the budget, but we're still lower than pre-pandemic levels. In expenses, there was a $148,000 variance, positive variance, and we spent less than what we budgeted. And primarily the bulk of that is in personnel cost. Once again, that's due to maybe some of the recreation programs that they offer that had restrictions on them, so they didn't offer those programs. Affected both expenses and revenues. And then in other financing uses is a fairly small piece. There was a $7,000 variance, and that's the transfer to the debt service fund for payments. Here's kind of the pie chart on the fund balance for the community center fund. Kind of shows the $3.7 million fund balance as by its different assignments. We have the operating reserve of 25%, 1.5 million, and then we have amounts that are restricted for community center, but they can be spent pretty much on anything within the community center. So this is kind of that fund that we've set aside money for equipment replacement or improvements to the facility and other major capital expenses. once again, it shows the same information, just how the growth and the changes between the 2 years. We have restricted for use on the community center of 2.1 million, committed reserve actually includes 458,000, which represents 25% of the operating expenses for the community center fund. It also includes $1.1 million for facility improvements. And then our capital equipment replacement fund, they have one vehicle, I think, 2 vehicles over there. So that increased $5,700, and that's serve the same funding as in the general fund. We talked, I think, a little bit about this policy here. So the 1% city sales tax, 6/10 of that goes away in 2039. So we just need to be cognizant of making sure that we're spending those funds appropriately and saving those funds appropriately for improvements to the community center. Going forward then to the sewer fund. There was a $109,000 variance in revenues, and that was primarily related to land investment fees, and that's based on new construction, whether it's residential or commercial. So we try and estimate that every year, and $109,000 was the difference between the estimate and what we actually received. On the expense side, there's a 1.2 million variance. At the end of last year, the city council approved a supplemental appropriation for the State Highway 6 sewer line repairs. And that project, while it got started in 2021, was a late year project, and we just barely started on it, really completed it up in 2022. So a lot of those funds that we appropriated are spent this year, but so they're not reflected in last year's financial statements. Questions on, well, there's one more sewer fund, 2 more sewer funds. So fund balance, because this is a proprietary fund, business type activity, it focuses on, it doesn't really have a fund balance, it has a net position. So the focus is on the long-term resources available. And once again, you can see here, 80% of the fund balance is invested in capital assets, your sewer lines, your wastewater treatment facility, and all the blowers, and manholes, and all that stuff that goes along with it. And those are really non-spendable funds, but they're what makes up our system and makes it work. We have amount restricted for loan, and that's based on loan covenants from CWRPDA and how we need to set aside money in case we have issues, and we can ensure that we make that loan payment. We have a equipment replacement fund, and that's $1.5 million in the sewer fund. And I'm constantly amazed when we see invoices come across my desk that the wastewater treatment facility has some expensive equipment. You don't replace anything there for less than $5,000, and usually it's a lot more. Yeah, those of you that took tours, yeah. So we set aside a pretty good amount for equipment replacement. If something goes out, a blower goes out, or some of that piece of equipment could be $250,000, and we need to have a fund available to get that ordered and replaced so we keep the sewers flowing in the city limits. So. Then we also have the unrestricted fund balance of $3.5 million at the end of the year, which represents about 12%. Keep in mind that there's about $500,000 of that fund balance that we spent this year on that State Highway 6 project. So that really, truly, as we go into next year, is closer to $3 million of unrestricted funds. This just kind of shows you the change in the year in those different asset types, or those fund net position types. With invested in capital assets, an increase of 461,000, a decrease in the loan agreement restrictions of 20,000, designated for equipment replacement, an increase of 46,000, and then an increase of 570,000 that we talked about in the unrestricted fund balance, which we're spending. Capital projects, just kind of refresh your memory. That we had scheduled and completed in 2021. Don't want to go into all of these in detail, but we had $2.5 million in capital projects and governmental funds, and approximately about $900,000 in the proprietary funds. Some of the biggest projects we had was design of Fremont Street, roundabout improvements with the sculptures that went in. We did some Maple Street improvements. Then we had just under $500,000 in mobile equipment purchases. And then we had some subdivision infrastructure, which is contributed assets by the developers, but we still get recorded on our books for the streets they build and the street lights and drainage, that type of thing. On the proprietary funds. There we go. Our major project there was the Maple Street sewer replacement. That was done in conjunction with the Maple Street improvements. So we combined those two together for one project. We also did some replacement of sewer lines in Ash Street, and then we had some minor projects there. We also had infrastructure that was donated by new development of just over, I don't know, $110,000, $150,000. On the debt side of the city, we have a total of $26 million in debt at the end of 2021. Our debt that consists of the revenue bonds, that's the bonds for the Fruita Community Center that we issued to construct that facility. We have a performance obligation to Mr. Tipping, and this was a public-private partnership with one of the property owners up on Glade Park. They did some improvements to our reservoirs and put up the cash, and in exchange for that, we agreed to provide them with so many acre-feet of water on an annual basis for a number of years. And so that is the balance of what we owe in non-monetary compensation. So we owe them that volume of water. The loans payable represents the wastewater treatment facility loan. We owe $15.2 million on that at the end of 2021, down almost $1 million from the prior year. So we're whacking away at it. And then we have compensated absences, which is a book accrual of vacation leave that's accrued by employees. Leave that up for a minute, Matthew.
He needs to stand. He can go up.
I can.
No, I'm good, but thank you. Bring my-
We'll get him trained one of these times to get larger numbers on the.
Better glasses.
We need a bigger screen, I think, because then he's going the budget for next year. Matthew's requesting.
Want this? I am more than happy to send you the presentation.
Yeah, you could send the presentation over. It'd be good.
So I have one more presentation, but is there any questions on the financial statements? I know y'all spent hours and hours going over it, understanding every part of it.
Thank you for boiling it down.
She always does a good job of condensing and.
If you.
Yeah.
We're dealing with the foul odors this year. Okay, so let me go back to the fiscal health analysis. So stop. Oh, did you stop it for me, Shannon?
Yeah.
You're the dad joke guy.
You're learning. That's good. What is it, Padawan? No.
This one's actually in your packet, so maybe it would be a little better to see Matthew.
Why do you think we sat in closer to the screen?
So Mike, can we talk about next year's budget?
Only on this side. It's on one side.
When we upgraded this during COVID, this was the largest screen the company felt like they could fit that didn't have other effects that I would not be able to explain, but this
Weight
room.
restrictions on the ceiling and.
Yeah, I share your pain. Though.
Actually, they should start just doing a little screen right in front of each. Like when you're sitting on a plane.
So the fiscal health analysis is a set of, I don't know, 7 to 10 points that the state auditor's office points out there to kind of gauge your financial statements and what's your financial condition, not just at one point in time, but as you look at past years and going forward to see, are there some problem areas you need to address some issues that might be going on. And so you'll see this every year, and it compares a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And they have what they call a benchmark. So in this case, this is a cash to liabilities ratio. So the benchmark they say is 1. You need to have enough cash to pay your liabilities that you have on the books. And anything over 1 is then cash that's in excess of your liabilities. So you can see here that they say the financial indicator when you need to start getting concerned is if there's a continuous decline in that number from year one to, in this case, year five, with year five less than one or less than one in all 3 years. We don't have any issues with our cash to liabilities ratio. We don't have to set aside accounts payable and pay them next week because we're cash poor. So we're good on our cash to liabilities ratio. The unrestricted fund balance, we kind of talked about that in our financial statements. And so they look at the unrestricted fund balance, it's like, how long can you operate on your unrestricted fund balance if you didn't have any revenue coming in? And so how long will those reserves last to pay future expenses? 0.25 is what they use as a guide, which is really a quarter of a year. So that's I can honestly tell you, I don't want to operate on 3 months of reserves. But you can see on our financial indicator here, it's growing every year, and we have enough to operate based on our current expenses about 1.91 a year, over almost 2 years. Okay. I don't know, 22 and a half. Oops.
It also makes the assumption that you're keeping your current costs.
Right.
Especially catastrophic happens, these costs would go down.
Yeah. The debt burden ratio, we've got 2 of these slides. One's for the sewer fund. One, the benchmark indicates that you have enough revenue to cover your debt service. And obviously you can see we're up in the 3 mark this year at 3.04. So we're got plenty of money to cover our debt service payments. Did I skip community center? Huh. Okay. Oh, there it was. There it was.
Oh my gosh.
Making it busy. It disappeared quickly. Oh. So once again, 1 indicates that you have enough to cover your debt service payments, and we're at 4.4. So we are more than adequately paying our debt service. Get past the sewer fund. Here's your tax revenue per capita. So what's the relationship between population growth and the tax revenue growth? So your benchmark is a steady number or an increasing number. That means your tax revenue is going up for the amount of population that you have. A concern would be is if there was a continuous decline from year 1 to year 5. You can see we took a fairly significant jump. This is reflective of that 5 years of city sales tax growth over 15.8% or average 15.8%, and still budgeting conservatively.
So does that mean that every resident of Fruita on average, the average is $910?
If everybody, yeah, essentially, it's just taking our revenue, dividing it by the population. And then how that averages out each year. So on the expenditures per capita, I mean, if you saw a similar graph to the revenues, I would not be concerned, but you can see more of a steady growth in the expenditures per capita from 493 to 575. Once again, you're looking at a benchmark of a steady or declining number. A financial indicator or area of concern would be an increase from the 1st year to the 5th year. But when you look at the chart, you can kind of easily see 493 to 575. You go back to the other one, you can see the difference in the revenue and the expense. So not really an area of concern, even if it were to be increasing year 1 to year 5. Our operating margin ratio, this is how much is added to reserves for every dollar generated in revenues. So your benchmark, anything greater than 0 indicates that you have more revenue than expenditures. You obviously want to be above 0. The financial indicator area of concern would be a decrease from the 1st year to the last year, with the last year being less than 0 or less than 0 in all 3 years. Obviously, our operating margin ratio, we are not below 0 in any of those categories. And then here it deals with the enterprise fund net position. And this includes the proprietary fund, sewer fund, irrigation, trash, Ellis Canyon Center. The benchmark that you have is a steady or constant number. And area of concern would be if you had a continuous decrease from the 1st year with any of the years less than 0 or negative net position. You can see this is a pretty steady or constant number, 1.02 to 1.04 and anywhere in between. So I think we are good on the financial fiscal year benchmarks that the state auditors puts out. Is there any questions on that? It's just kind of another way to look at things. And if those areas or those indicators are showing a decline, continuously decline, then it's an area that's like, we need to start paying attention to this and see what's going on and see what we can do to reverse that trend. So as we talked about, next council meeting, or second meeting in July, the auditors will be here and tell you whether or not what I stated and what is represented in those pages is accurate. Allow you to ask any questions with any changes they may make. And I did find a mistake in one of my formulas today, and I copied it. So there will, I'm sure, be a few of those. Get a final version.
Any questions for Margaret?
I'm thankful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Snores.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we're going to move into our city manager's report.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of council. A few items of update. The first is we're going to put up on the screen the resolution that you already approved, and there's no need for a revote. There was no substantive changes, but yeah, I don't know. That's hard to read right there.
See that? That one's smaller.
Mike, do you want me to just explain real quick?
That would be great. That would be great.
Okay, so apologize for, earlier, that was the incorrect resolution that was in the packet. And only incorrect, not again in the substance, but in the recitals and descriptions. I then pulled one that I thought was the final one based upon what Odette and I had gone back and forth on. That's what got thrown up earlier, which you guys couldn't read anyway, that's my understanding. And then Odette and I realized after the vote that there was actually, that wasn't the final version. So this is the final version. Again, no need to re-vote on this issue or reopen public comment because there's no substantive change. The date that the notice went out to the employees was June 13th, not June 10th. So that's been corrected. And if you want to just scroll up a little bit, Mike, then the recitals are just more clear as to what family would have been requiring. So that's it. I just wanted to make sure that it was on the record that, this was the final thing that the mayor will be signing.
All right, well, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Sorry again for all that confusion, but we got it right.
Yeah. And then we'll do a little larger type size next time. so
Right.
I'll read it efficiently.
Other updates are, as you know, there's been some private sewer line issues on Aspen Street with a few businesses, and Wednesday and Thursday, there's going to be some repairs which will close Aspen Street. The repairs that those businesses are contracting and having done, it'll close Aspen Street from the east side of the circle to Mulberry for Wednesday and Thursday. So notice is going out. We are already going out tomorrow morning. We just got this confirmation from them. So it's not necessarily a city project, but we want to get the word out. So we're sending that to all the businesses in the area and posting that on the city's channels. We also, when City Council approved the Parks, Health, Recreation, Open Space and Trails Master Plan, one of the first goals to be worked on was to have a review of the impact fee for parks, trails, and open space. And we, as you're aware, we received a grant that started a process earlier or at the end of last year. And now we've gotten to the point where that consultant group that's working on that, we're having them engage with stakeholders. So we've contacted all of the development groups, there are different leaderships to, they're going to be participating with our consultant to give feedback and kind of walk through the methodology. And and get feedback from them before we schedule a time where the consultant then works with you. So we can kind of bring that feedback from our stakeholders, the work that the consultant's been doing, and then they'll present that to you at a future meeting. There's no rush to move to implement something right away. So we're trying to just take the time to go through and also consider the times we're in. If there were, to implement any type of change, how we would do that, what if there, it would be something we would discuss with council in the future on, is it a rolling change? Is it, anyway, there'll be a lot of detail, but I just wanted you to be aware because you will have not heard, any update from the consultant before we're gathering some stakeholder feedback, but that's so that we can get that feedback and bring it all to council and then make decisions on how we want to move forward on that. So that stakeholder meeting is, I believe it's at the end of next week. So that's scheduled, and we've gotten a great response from people to have representation at that. One thing we haven't talked about that we missed when we were doing boards and commissions, and you don't have to decide this tonight, but I just want to put it out there, is we have one other group, the Fruita Youth Action Council, who you've seen, they did an update not too long ago. They're a great group. It's one of my favorites because they are incredibly engaged youth and leaders of youth in our community. And Karen Linhart acted as the liaison from council. They meet once a month on the second Monday from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And so,
Say Heather. Did anybody else hear Heather's name thrown out in the ring for that one?
His daughter's on there, so I feel
Yeah.
like.
yeah. So I just wanted to, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be good to have somebody. So if you guys, that'd be awesome. If you guys want, there doesn't have to be any formal action, but.
I better clear with her. She's the nicer of my two daughters. You might let me, but if they'll have me, I'll do it.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, second Monday, 6:30 to 8 o'clock, and it's at the community center, I believe is where they. Oh, right. I think it is. Forgot about that.
Hey, I offered you.
Yeah, that's
Tell-
She's gonna be happy. What are you talking about?
But something to think about for the group to assign somebody.
All right, so wait, we got two more people that are ready to jump in. Which one's gonna?
My schedule is available to support that if nobody else wants it.
Same. We can work it out. Go
All right, well, let's work it out tonight. Which one?
ahead.
I'll take it.
All right. Okay.
Wait, you don't have any kids on it, right?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
That, ladies and gentlemen, Fruita City Council. In a nutshell, right there.
There we go.
HR is here, right?
Yeah, but that would have happened before he was on council, so I don't know how that would relate. So.
The last item is there was a House bill that passed and was signed into law, but it takes 90 days in May, and it takes 90 days to implement that. We received some notice from one of the HOAs in Fruita that's a very active HOA in the community. And what the bill does in summary, it's House Bill 22-1139. And in summary, it prohibits HOAs from having the ability to create rules in the public right of way. So typically, it's very common for an HOA to have something like a limitation on an RV or a camper trailer on the road, or how many cars could be parked in front of a house or on and those types of things. So when that takes effect, they no longer have that power to do that. Cities still do, but HOAs do not. The city has not weighed in on those typically because that's been a covenant controlled piece. And then the city does have some general regulations in that regard throughout the city. So I just wanted you all to be aware that that's happening. Our planning and development department will be working with planning and development departments across the state that are in different ways they're reacting to this and different ways that it can be handled so that we can bring something to you to discuss in the future. But it's something that I can't remember the number of bills, but you heard how many bills. So it's one that we are it's kind of just becoming on the radar for cities. And so we're going to start looking into that, having discussions and trying to bring some recommendations and have a discussion with council on how we react to that, because there's various ways we could do that, but it will affect many HOAs and they're going to want to know how they deal with that change. So it's something we're going to start working on and schedule in the future, but I didn't want you to be surprised if you hear something from it.
Can you state again when that goes into effect?
Yeah, it was. Let's see if I can. So it's 90 days after it was signed, and it was signed May 6th. So I don't know the exact date, but 90 days from May 6th. So,
And what, I'm sorry, Mike, this might be stupid, but what is it saying that the HOAs can't tell people that they can do those things or what?
yeah, so just so some of the regulations that they create, not for their whole neighborhood, but in the public right of way. So on the street, essentially, it's taking away that ability for them to create they can have it, but it would not be enforceable. Yeah. Yeah. That's everything. Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, Mike. All right, with that, we're going to go back to council reports and actions. So we've got one item on here, and it's the action to cancel our Tuesday, August 2nd meeting and make it our strategic planning meeting from 5 to 9. Is there any discussion on that, or do we have a motion to change that? Janine wants to make a
I
motion.
do. I move to approve that we change our original scheduled August 2nd meeting as a strategic planning meeting to Highline Lake.
Second. Counselor Cry,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Bremen. Yes. Counselor Purser,
Yes.
Counselor Williams,
Yes.
motion passes 5-0.
All right, we'll move into our council reports. We'll start with Amy.
I attended my first planning and zoning meeting. That was pretty straightforward. We had a couple of annexations and rezonings. One close to the Fruita 8-9 school and the other off of, I think it was 19 Road. They were very straightforward. They fit, well within our plan, our master plan. And then we also reviewed, what was that? I can't remember what Dan went over.
Was it the circulation plan?
the
Yeah.
Circulation plan. Yeah. So that was just nice to hear a little update on that. And then Mayor Kincaid and I also interviewed 2 applicants for planning and zoning this afternoon. So that was also very productive.
Sounds good. Thank you. Ken.
Most meetings outstanding are forthcoming, not outstanding. They'll probably be outstanding, but they're also forthcoming. It's not a city board, but it is a board, I guess. It's sort of related. Was reappointed as the chair of the Colorado National Monument Association tonight. Thank you. Also, I did want to comment that I don't know, it's tourism. I think that I've noticed online the video quality for all of Fruita's videos sort of looks like it's being played on old VCRs. I don't know if that's something that it seems like the video quality has gone down and doesn't seem like it's necessary because all platforms support high resolution videos
And we know we have the high res versions of those videos that we've made available to Cole Vita, who's posting those for the tourism. But Ken did let me know this, and we had seen it as well. And I don't know if you want to speak to it, Shannon, or. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ken. We did talk with Colvita today, and they're going to look into some of the settings and make sure that when they do post on the Instagram stories, that it's always at the highest resolution possible. I think maybe some of the issues we did a rebrand of the Play Like a Local. I'm sure you've seen the new design. So in previous videos, they've cut out that last one, so that may have reduced the quality, but they're going to make sure that they have the correct high resolution ones to add to our stories. They were going to look into it again. So yeah, we addressed that with them this morning. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. But yeah, we saw that as well. So thanks for bringing that up.
I like I had something else, but
We
I'll
always can
reserve
come
it
back
for,
to you,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
All right, thank you. James.
My stuff's all been canceled. I haven't had anything. I did just get an email from the museum board. We're no longer looking for railroad ties. If you remember, I was asking for that a while back. That's not on the table anymore. And no, we're supposed to have, our tourism's canceled this week too. So I can't yell at Colvita, which I love to do, as Shannon's already noticed. But no, other than that, I don't really have anything. I do want to bring up the fact that I am going to champion a dog park in Fruita at some point. So that was something that I don't know who I talked to help me move that forward, but I've had many members of the community, mostly my wife, that drives me nuts about it. But no, I do feel like it's something that we should try to look at too. See if I can get some support for that. So
It is a goal in the Frost plan with some potential locations and trying to find funding for. So it was something that came out of that process from the community as well. So
yeah, I'm wondering that maybe some point I can get with you and Shannon and see what that looks like, because I'd like to kind of push for that.
All right,
That's
Janine.
it.
We had our downtown advisory board meeting last week with summer seems to be a hard time to get people to come. So we didn't even have enough people to make any sort of anything consensus, but we did go over the survey results with Mulberry Street and what we all had voted on last week. So we gave that update, and one of the members that has been on there for at least 2 terms is leaving the downtown advisory board and going on to a different board. So they are still looking for more members, even though they've got several new members in the recently. There's still room for more people. And then the Livability Commission had a representative from AARP come and do this great presentation for everybody there. And it was open to the public, and Ciara did a great job, or I think it was Ciara, putting it out there to everybody. So anyone who knew, anyone who wanted to come could. And there was some public outside of just the commission that was there, and it was pretty fascinating. And we rank 56 livability. It's a percentage, and actually when you think of 56, you might think that that's not a good score, but it is a great score, or a very good score. So he also said that he thought Fruita was ahead of the curve on livability in general, and specifically with seniors. So that was awesome. And he had great literature that he was able to pass out. And I took some things that I will share with you guys at a workshop at some point.
All right, sounds good. Before I go to Matthew, I just wanted to see if Deb, you could send out like maybe all the openings again for the boards, because I think that helps us if we're out in the community to say, okay, what's available and where are we looking for? Because I know you've been doing that kind of consistently just to keep us on top.
Yeah.
Right.
That was done. I think I already let you know.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would help. Because I think we've got quite a few boards that have some openings right now. So, okay. That would be great, just as a reminder, as we're out in the community looking for people for those. All right, Matthew.
Okay, for the chamber, we're just working through a lot of the bylaws for the foundation. We haven't actually had meetings since last, but that's just been going back and forth. GJEP on June 30th. We're actually interviewing 2 finalists. So third time's the charm. I'm feeling good about this one. And just as a side, my new insurance kicks in on July 1. So perhaps I should schedule an appointment with Dr. Reader at Visual. So that'll be on my future list.
That's all positive news.
I did remember what I was going to say. I got,
Wait, I didn't go to you yet.
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, Ken, we'll let you go.
I did get positive feedback on Thursday night concerts. Somebody from the public told me that they thought that the quality of the acts that we're getting, they're obviously pros, and they wanted to give us kudos for the quality of the bands that we bring in.
I have one.
That's
I
nice to hear.
also forgot one thing.
All right.
It is a Fruita Fourth Friday this Friday. So in regards to the Downtown Advisory Board, they put that on. Go down to Mulberry, and all the businesses. Skips is having their open house in conjunction with Fruita Fourth Friday. So come downtown.
Okay. And just a reminder, since Ken said that about the concerts, the 30th is the day that we do the ice cream social. So
What is the incorporation of the city council on that? Are we serving the
we
ice
serve
cream?
the ice cream.
Okay, so I was wondering if
Little
that's. what-
cups. They're like when you're a kid.
And they have a wooden
Yeah.
spoon.
No, I like. Oh, I was down. I was down for that.
I mean,
There's only one there.
Mhm.
I'm excited for it.
so I think, yeah, I mean, one year we're gonna probably go promote like root beer floats or something like really out there would be awesome, but I'm sure we've already set for this year, so.
Before I did want
Wait, how-
to. No,
Go
I
ahead.
just remembered, I did want to ask for the light nuisance.
Oh, yes.
So how was that resolved? Like what,
How is that resolved?
or how was it settled? I don't know what the word for that would
But
be.
yeah,
Do you want to handle that, Mike? Because I mean, I talked to her personally after, and she understands our point of view on what we can do. So Mike, if you want to fill in.
it's true. I don't think, so the mayor did send a final kind of response to her, but I don't think that got sent to you all, actually, now that you bring that up. So, oh, did
Yeah,
you?
it went out to all
Oh,
city-
you did. Okay, okay. So the challenge with that is, so all new builds require specific lights that go, shine down and have, this was 18 years ago, so it predates any of that, which is a good majority of houses in Fruita that don't have what new builds require. So this is one of those examples where it should be something very simple, even just a conversation between 2 neighbors, and someone makes an adjustment and no big deal. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And we have absolutely no ability to enforce anything else. So we had that conversation. There were conversations to try and see if we could remedy that in a way, but and the person who sent the email was very well. I mean, Joel actually Mayor talked to her on the phone, I believe, and was able to, after the email went out, and she was very understanding. She's just trying everything she can do to convince the person to put a less dim light in their backyard. So
I was,
Non-compliant. So the other person is non-compliant or doesn't want to work. Yeah, doesn't want to do anything.
I will say, from looking at those pictures, the ones that she took of her blackout curtains, those are not blackout curtains. Is this lady an elderly lady?
I'd say a little older.
I'm not sure.
Her whole deal was she had brain surgery,
Yeah,
so I mean, she could be anywhere from 30 to
This might be
70, I
outside
don't
of
know.
the purview of what we can do, but just because of the fact that the other person's not breaking any rules and she can have those. I would why don't we just buy her some real freaking blackout curtains as just the courtesy of the city? Buy her some blackout curtains.
Everybody wants.
I know.
Yeah, I think that's the
my.
deal.
No, I guess you're right.
It
I
opens
guess
up
you're
a big-
right.
a Big
Yeah.
can of worms. It's like Pandora's
Yeah,
box.
I
It's
mean,
like, yeah.
I would do it myself as just a business then.
On what those curtains.
Well, it's like Mike said, he
Or
goes, well, we
maybe-
could buy a light bulb to put in the other one, but if the other person isn't receptive to put it in, I mean, or a light.
It seems
fixture,
like
but
that
then
one lady won't be
We've got
involved.
thousands of homes
Yeah.
that have light fixtures are like that. So it's back to that. Okay, where is that point where you do it for one citizen?
Yeah. I
Is that
guess
policy the
frustrating,
same
though.
for each person that comes before council?
I mean, it's possible to give her some links to better blackout curtain.
I think that, yeah, that information would be good for her to have, because those are not blackout windows that curtains she got. Because I know
Or the
about
light is
blackout
that
ones.
bright, but but we did have that conversation, and I mean, I appreciate Mike and the staff,
Just so
going
you,
out and really
just so you all know, when you received the email, staff had been working with them for a couple weeks already. So, and it wasn't a disappointment in staff. It was just she's reaching out to everybody and anybody to try and find any way to handle it. So they had worked with her for a couple weeks and tried to figure something out that we're able to do. And then that's what led to the email. So.
So for the new council, welcome to Fruita City Council. But I think that's one thing that says a
Those are
lot.
our worst
Right.
problems. Like, I
Right.
think we're okay. We're.
No, and I think,
And I like that we're addressing them,
Right.
we take them seriously. and
well, I think our
really
staff does a
appreciate
good
that.
job
Yeah.
of.
Well, I like the
addressing
fact that she felt comfortable to reach out. She
Right.
tried all her avenues, and then, I just hate to know that the solution is really simple and she just doesn't have it. Maybe if I just drop a couple of 20s on the ground and you just pick them up, go buy her some curtains.
Well, put it this way, if you happen to get the address and dropped off some curtains, then I don't think.
Then that might, yeah, okay,
So-
maybe that's what we should do.
Let's see, we have HR here.
All right, well, oh yeah, I haven't done council reports because everybody jumped in on that, so. All right, Ken, no. What?
When's the, I apologize, I can't remember when that.
Okay, so and Mike probably has that exact, well, okay, so there's a couple things with that one. So I went to that meeting for them. I didn't get up and speak because they did a continuance. I did get another email from Mike about that they were having a special meeting with Palisade. So I did email Cody. I haven't heard back from him to say, hey, are you going to set up something with Fruita, to have that? Because he is our rep here. So I haven't heard back from him, so I'll follow back up with him. But they did move it to June, what was it?
28th.
Okay,
So they continued the hearing to the 28th, and then they said we're going to have a special workshop on the 22nd. So our staff were continually kind of asking, hey, can we find out when and where this workshop is? And then we were told it was not an open meeting, but a workshop with Palisade residents that were concerned. So I don't know how that works, but
How do we get that?
Yeah.
so
that's what I asked Cody.
so the
was-
mayor requested the same for us, and we're waiting to hear back. So.
Okay, so that answer that one.
Yes.
All
thank
right,
you, Mr.
yep. Then I haven't had any meetings, because all my meetings are on quarterly basis or longer, so that's nice. I did go to the Juneteenth celebration on Sunday to read the proclamation. So they had I'd say, okay turnout. I don't think it was,
The weather was
great.
a little rough.
I don't even think it was the weather. I think it was just Father's Day, and so I think that was just part of it. And so, but I mean, it was good to see people out there and just the positive attitude on it. So, other than that, I won't be here for Matthew's covering the meeting on the July. So it'll be the one that we're doing the audit. So I won't be here for that one.
I won't be able to make the June 28th.
You won't be able to?
Correct. June.
Oh, next week. So that one is so we'll have to get you information because that's an important one. I know with the
That's when.
policies.
Birthday, so.
No, that's true. That one's important too.
That's the one we scheduled a couple months ago with Sursa, where they're coming to walk you all through a norms of conduct exercise and kind of set up all of that. So it's with Tammy Tenoy, the executive director of Sursa, that
We
night.
may need to,
Good
yeah.
on norms of conduct.
Yeah, so we may need to update you a little bit after, but that's all right. So, all right. Any other ones anybody knows that we can just let Mike know now before? And always feel free to send him an email and
Are there any concern or any conflicts with So there's a July 5th meeting, which is the day after the 4th of July. And I thought it'd be good to just check. That's a good time. People could be gone, maybe not. So,
Out of town, but I can remote in.
okay.
Are we still looking good for fireworks?
We are right now. Yeah. Yeah. We usually, so I think we went into stage 1 and we usually call it if we go to stage 2.
Okay. Perfect. All right. With that, I better look and see. The time is 8:35. We are adjourned.